You walk up to the house. The exterior is made of wood. The door is locked by a lion head-shaped padlock. I would like to pick the lock if I can. You are not able to. Okay, fair. Can I break a window to get in? You can't seem to break the window. What can I do? Well, let me tell you. The world is your oyster. Where are we going today? Alright, let's go to the town to the south. Great choice. You arrive at Town 14. Townsville. Yeah, Townsville. Does the town have a blacksmith I can see? Great question. It does now. Okay, what's his name? Another great question. First name Black, last name Smith? What race are the... No more questions, just no more questions.
Welcome to SquidPublic. Slay the like button, subscribe for more content, join Patreon for one-shots and other content, as well if you liked the video, leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching.
Hello everyone, in this video we're going to go over maybe why railroads have a negative connotation and how we can help resolve that. Most of our media is actually railroad style, as books and movies don't have open world options for you to interact with, you just enjoy the good story. Therefore, there's no reason why we can't have a good story in a railroad style. We'll talk about the downfalls of how railroads become the bad, but also talk about how railroads can become really good and how that compares to a true open world. And the main thing that's definitely going to kill the creativity of railroad is only having one solution per problem. This kills creativity, often only allows one ability check or one die roll for crucial important information, and can also stifle roleplay as the roleplay does not actually help progress you towards the goal in which you're trying to accomplish. A railroad is really just a definitive beginning and a definitive end, and you kind of have points throughout on where you're going to go. Therefore, some people that consider things open world may actually be a little more railroad than they think. So you may be thinking, isn't that kind of open world, the fact that you can do all this weird stuff in the middle and not be horribly structured? Not really. So let's talk about that situation, why it's not exactly like that. The party has to exist in the world in which you created, and there's really not too terribly much more you can add. Unlike an open world where someone says, hey, we want to travel south, and you're like, I haven't made anything up there yet, let me add some stuff next session. And a railroad, you're like, here's your 5 towns, or whatever. You can go between any of them. They all have their own history, people, and their relevance in the world. And that's what kind of makes a difference than an open world. Because open world, you don't necessarily have all those pre-created, and they may not all interact very well in the beginning. As you get more experience with open world, you may be faster on the fly doing that. But in the beginning, at least for me, I really struggled connecting the world. And railroads actually do a really good job of connecting the world you're in. And players can function in their world making quote-unquote free choices, but in all reality, they're still within the confines of what you want them to be in. So once again, we pose the question, why would we do a railroad? It just sounds like it's no fun. It can be if done improperly, but open worlds can also be really empty and kind of boring if also done wrong. Both are extremely useful in their own manner. It's just I feel like sometimes railroads get a little... I feel like no DM wants to be labeled as, oh, they're a railroad DM, because it sounds like the DM's not creative or they don't allow you to do what you want to do. But if the DM has a great story and you're free to make a lot of different choices, but you keep progressing towards the story the DM wants you to, that's going to be more of a style thing than actual DM not doing a good session. And an example of this are modules. Modules are pure railroads. They have a beginning, they have an end, they have defined characters, but the characters / players make choices in that world. And the story's so good because, at least for modules, obviously someone's already done all the background stuff, but even if you're doing your own personal railroad, you don't have to worry about creating a bajillion towns. You don't have to worry about creating a bajillion characters you're going to forget. You don't have to worry about the characters doing complete 180 on you, going somewhere you had no idea they wanted to. Railroads serve their purposes, and if you do them well, you're definitely going to have an enjoyable experience. Imagine a railroad like a magnifying glass on a picture, right? You're going to be able to get great detail, great textures and understanding of that area, but maybe not the whole picture. So if your players like the more broad, just do what we want kind of thing, railroad may not be what you want. However, if your players love in-depth detail, character arcs, Railroad actually is probably something you really want to look forward to. So I'm going to do the positives for both, and then we'll get into the downfalls of both. I've kind of alluded to both already, but I want to get an overview of why you should try more Railroads or more Railroad style if you're a DM. Don't be afraid if one of your players is like, are you railroading us? Be like, no, I'm just pushing you towards a common story or goal. The players are still free to do all of their own options. It's just you as the DM have an endpoint you definitely want to get to. Because if you do a railroad correctly, you'll find your players get just naturally invested and they don't even know it because they get so attached to characters, ideas, and stories that they won't even realize it, but they'll just go with the flow. Now, why open world? Railroad versus open world. How are we looking at this? When most people think of D&D, at least I did, I thought, open world, why would you make a railroad? Go wherever you want, create whatever you want, have things there that don't make sense because you want them there. And that's perfectly fine, that's a lot of fun as well. Open worlds are usually more loose, allow more loose rules, creatures you want to throw at the party. The players can kind of do what they want as well because there's not too many negative consequences where they can always reroll a new character without completely destroying character arcs and the whole story. My first campaign I ran as a DM was open world, and I had a few pre-made stuff, but as we continued to play, I kept adding things into the map, as I pretty much just put a few big geographical towns just to give me bearings, and then I filled in mines, I filled in lakes, mountain passes, things to the south, and that was a lot of fun. However, things suffered, things didn't make sense historically. There was only really one character NPC that transcended across all towns and stuff. So in terms of like people and getting invested in them, no one cared about the NPCs. The towns were the towns and the players just kind of did whatever they want. It's not bad. It's just a different style. And as I said, another great thing about open world is changing of direction can happen very quickly if you want. Because there's no long thought out story path maybe. So you're not ruining like half a book or 3 sessions worth. If you're in a mine, he said, oh, no way, this mine sucks. We don't want to be here. You can leave. There's no precious trinket or artifact down there maybe that you have to get for the main story. You say, nah, we walked into the wrong place, wrong time, we're backing out. And that's the beauty of open world. You don't have to go through that mine. So something that was really fun, a personal story of mine that happened in my open world, was we had a orc wizard and we had a big dumb dragonborn lizard. And those two in the one town decided, they asked me, is there like a library? I said, yeah, sure, there's a library. And they said, well, how are the local townspeople educated? And I was like, I don't know, not very. So they opened up their own school and they would have the big dumb lizard go get people and then the orc would teach them how to read and write. I never expected it, never saw it for 1,000 years. It was open world. I said, I don't mind dedicating time to this. I wasn't like, well, it doesn't really fit into my railroad. You guys have to leave this town in a month. Like, I don't really want to. The players did what they wanted to. A lot of fun. So that's the great side of open world is you can do really weird things. Spend time on stuff that maybe in railroads is not as important because you're not really on any time sensitive missions. If you're a DM and you're not sure which your party likes, just ask them. Be like, hey, do you guys want to go anywhere, anytime? Have things kind of detailed, but not really. But just the pure adventure is going to be worth it. Or, flip side, say, hey guys, I want to probably create about maybe 4 or 5 big towns, some minor towns in between. You're going to travel with a similar NPC the whole time or meet like an archetype, but the story's going to be really rich and really detailed. Does that interest you, or do you not want to be pigeonholed to my story/direction? With that question, your players should understand, like, do I want somewhat undetailed open world, or do I want really detailed railroad where I can still make my own free choices, but it's not going to be like I can just break free from the story at any point? So for example, for railroad is, hey, this wizard is looking for some magical artifact to make him into a lich. That'd be railroad. Now, a lot of stuff could get filled in the middle there, but your main story is guy trying to find stone to become a lich. If the players don't want to do that, it's really going to suffer. Open world would be like, hey guys, I'm going to drop you in a random town, and whatever you gravitate towards, I'm going to start making sessions for that. Each way is perfectly okay. Just need to make sure your players understand where you're going with this. The question for this video is, think about your favorite piece of media that is, quote unquote, would be railroad style, right? And then think of a piece of media that's a little more open world. For example, one of my more favorite railroads would be like the Halo franchise's story modes way back in the day, not the recent ones, but Halo 2 was one of my favorite. Your mission had an end point, had a beginning point, but how you got there was kind of up to you. And then, let's say for Witcher 3, you still have a beginning and end point, but there's way more side quests you can do. Mid-mission or mid-side quest, you can say, you know what, nah, I'm done with it, I'm gone. Can't really do that in Halo 2. You can't say, hey, I'm done with this level, let me go to this place. No, you progress literally from point A to point B. In The Witcher, eventually you get point A, but then like to point Z, because there's all these other points you can hit throughout. So let me know what your favorite piece of media is for Railroad and open world. And finally, I saved the bad for last. Where railroads are just utter disasters are when you do not allow multiple solutions per problems. I said this in the very beginning, I'll say it now. So in my interest kit, I have that house, right? Where it's like, oh, you can't pick the lock, you can't break the window, what can you do? And DM's like, well, let me tell you steps 1 through 20. That's really boring. No one wants to do a series of MacGuffin chasings because the DM said so. Your players still want creativity. They still want to feel like they have options in how they solve problems. So hiding things behind a single dice roll is really bad. Not allowing role play to get automatic information is really bad. Giving your players a scenario, like I said, with one solution is terrible. Maybe they don't fail in one dice roll, but they have to do, let's say in that house, they had to dig a tunnel underneath for some reason. Kind of boring, not a lot of fun. And a great way to tell if you're writing a bad railroad or a bad railroad section is if someone asks you a question, or if you ask yourself a question and going, why do they have to do it that way? And your answer is pretty much because I wrote it that way. Really strong chance that that section is poorly written, or at least poorly thought out. You need to try again, because if you say, because I said so as the DM for a story or solution, it's kind of bad probably. It might be fun, but for the most part, if you're just telling the story to the players and players are just rolling dice to see if they can like pass through your story, it's kind of bad. And now we're going to get to the negatives of open world. I've already said it a lot. Is things sometimes can just exist in open worlds and can contradict each other. I will have future videos talking about how to build better open worlds at the start, because you do want some background information in your open world. You want general rules about how magic's looked at, how this is looked at. That way you're not possibly contradicting yourself or locking yourself into something you don't want to be locked into, because you don't want to contradict yourself in past sessions. And another thing is, and it's even my natural tendency, and I like combat more, but people like to ask, who are these people? Why are we here? What's the town called? You know, what do they do for fun? Like, there's so many questions about X, Y, and Z that it's just natural for players to ask. Now, you can break your party of that if you say, hey guys, everything's going to be kind of superficial. Every town will have these 5 buildings. I'm not giving names. I'm not giving special voices because it's just far too much for every town you guys want to visit. That's perfectly okay. But do understand that obviously that is going to decrease some aspects of roleplay, which is okay. So if your players like that, cool. If your players don't like that, you may want to do more of a railroad style where NPCs are a little more in depth. People in the town actually have a purpose, but you don't have as many towns and you have more sessions in each town because there's more things to do rather than just doing some generic problem that popped up magically when the heroes arrived. There's a lot of benefits to Railroad. There's also some decent pitfalls. Same thing with open world. Open world can be a blast, and as ironic as it sounds, open world can actually be a little closed-minded because things are so big and so open that you don't actually get a lot of choices, because there's no way for a DM to prepare for that much all the time unless they can almost do it full time.